call the Bucyrus City Council Joint Regular Committee meeting for Thursday, September 23rd to order at 6:03 p.m. Members present, myself, Kevin Myers, James Mee, Bruce Truca, C. Aaron Sherrick, Doug Vogt, Lisa Ossept. Bucyrus City Joint Regular Committee meeting was called to order by myself at 6:03 p.m. Public participation.
I have questions on the minutes. Do you wish me to state those now or wait until you come to approval of minutes?
That is the next thing on the agenda.
Well, it is, but we have to do those separately in each committee.
Well, go ahead and do the finance and because that's what's coming up next.
Okay. The only thing on the finance, first off, it's the August 13th meeting, not the September 13th meeting. The agenda has 9/13/2021. The minutes are actually August 13/21. The only change I have on that is page 2 of 2, where it talks about McKeever asked for any public participation. Line 1, just asking for the removal of the word about.
Okay? For finance. Okay.
Let's see. I guess then I'll ask the Finance Committee this question. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I'm counting correctly, there are 6 committee meeting minutes that have not been prepared. I'm wondering the status of those minutes. Do you know what minutes I'm talking about?
One is for the one that had no minutes at all for our interviewing.
Executive session, 5:24. We also have minutes yet to be prepared for the July 8th, 21 meeting, minutes for the July 22nd meeting, the August 5th meeting, the September 8th meeting, the September 9th meeting, and also the cover page for the 5-6 Joint Council Committee meeting minutes, which when I asked the status of that at the 7/22/21 meeting, I was told by Clerk Warren that she had it done. So I'm wondering, why is it not being presented?
Does anybody have any questions for Vicki?
I actually have a question.
Yes, Aaron.
Since this order of business had approval of minutes and we have to do it, should we just get all the information out of the way now? Since that's all listed here at the top? Right.
Does anybody object to that? If not,
Mr. Chairman, I think Joyce has a meeting to get to.
Oh, so do I, same one.
Yeah, so,
We'll both be late.
yeah.
okay, we'll do the finance and then after finance, so Joyce can leave.
Oh, I won't be able to leave.
do have another correction to page 2 of 2 of the ones that Vicki already went through.
Okay.
And that's the very last line. It says that Myers adjourned the special health and safety meeting when that was on the minutes for the finance and public and buildings meeting.
Now, which one are we looking at here? The,
Page 2 of 2 of the first one you
August 13th.
discussed, yes.
right.
Is your committee line?
What was that?
The very last line.
It says Myers adjourned the Special Health and Safety Committee meeting.
So then I guess since we're concerned that we want to get Joyce out of here so she can get to another meeting, do we want Joyce to do her thing and then I'll come back up and finish my public participation?
If that's all right.
Thank you.
Mark, I do have another correction in these. I have a correction in these minutes also on page 1 of 2, where it talks about Wagner noted the total cost for service garage improvements, which was approved by the state auditor to use, it says street levy funds, and that should be street CM&R for construction, maintenance, and reconstruction, because that fund uses more than just levy, and we're using the gasoline tax to cover this.
So it needs a CMR.
CM&R, yeah, should be there.
I think he just stated it wrong.
Yes, he did. Because I clarified that further down, but I just thought that it should say street CM&R there.
Okay. All right. We will proceed to finance at 6:10 PM. Okay, fund creation and appropriations. Joyce.
Okay. For the fund creation, this is for the Ohio Attorney General's grant for crime victims assistance. We need to create Fund 281, which will be the 2022 Crime Victims Assistance. And also the categories, the Department 7728 Victim Advocate. The object level is 21 for personal services, and I also added 24 for materials and supplies in case we need something there. So at this point, those are all zeros. We're just creating the fund and the lines. Same thing for the Fund 282, the 2022 Victims of Crime Act. Same department, 7728 Victim Advocate, and Object 21 Personal Services. So we'll need to approve that for legislation as an emergency, because this takes effect October 1.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve creation of these two funds with emergency legislation.
Second.
With that, do I have any other questions, discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimous. Next, Joyce.
Okay, next are the appropriations for these two funds. In Fund 281, Crime Victims Assistance, we need to appropriate from unappropriated funds $10,590, which goes to the Victim Advocate Department, $10,340 to Personal Services, and $250 for materials and supplies. This is for the first quarter of this grant. Then in Fund 282, the 2022 Victims of Crime Act, that's $5,000, Department 7728 Victim Advocate, and $5,000 to Personal Services.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or like to make a motion?
I'll move to request legislation approving these appropriations as emergency.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, if there's no other discussion,
I have a question.
yes.
On the top victims assistance, you're adding those two lines and coming up with this total, but at the bottom, it's not that way. It adds up to 10,000. Is that a accident or?
Well, we only have one category in the bottom one, which is personal services at
Oh, okay.
$5,000.
And that's under the victim
Yes,
advocate? Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other questions or discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimous. Okay, next item. Water line project.
Yes, we need, as we continue to move forward with the Beta project, this is a resolution we need to be able to apply for the WSRLA loan.
That, you know, we're wishing that it will be forgiven, but this is just for us to apply. And that's one more piece of paperwork I gotta have signed and turned into Cindy Brooks from RCAP.
So you was hoping for a grant, and this is backing it up, correct?
Well,
In case we don't get the grant.
well, this is all part of it. That part of this would be forgiven, or it would all be forgiven. This is the loan we're going after to pay for it. But we have to fill out this to apply for it.
To apply for the grant.
Yeah. And the loan. It's all a loan/grant. It's,
Okay.
it could be forgiven, they could forgive 50% of it, they could forgive 90%, they could forgive all of it, because we're doing regionalization. But right now, this is just to apply for it, and we gotta have that in with all our other paperwork.
Does anybody else have any questions?
So we don't have any idea how much payments would be if they didn't forgive any of it?
No, not yet, because we don't have we have an estimated total cost of the project, but it isn't all the way drawn up yet,
Okay.
so.
Okay. I am going to ask for a motion for this WSRLA loan application as an emergency.
So move.
Second.
Okay. Are there any other questions, discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimous. Okay. Are there any open projects in finance you want to discuss this evening?
Well, let's circle back to our minutes,
Right.
if nothing else.
I was just asking if for anything else before the minutes. If not, let's go back to the minutes. Vicki? Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
And Mark.
Mark, she'd already corrected your minutes. I said she'd already corrected your minutes. So if you guys wanted to vote on passing or not passing those as corrected, you could do that part and we could go on. I mean, you could probably even close out finance,
Okay.
just saying.
We have the June 3rd joint committee meeting minutes, of which finance is in there.
It's in tonight's packet right here.
Page 3. It says 1 of 4. You guys are see.
Okay.
Flip one more. There you are.
So do you want to,
You said you got the June 3rd, you have a correction for the finance?
yes. In fact, it's, well, let me get my minutes here. It's a correction for, now let's see here. Yes. Really, it's a correction for most all the minutes or the meetings, because this was one of those where the minutes for each individual committee were all put together. They weren't, separate. And what was not done, even though we've had this discussion repeatedly, and at our July 22nd meeting, Councilperson Myers confirmed that he thought identifying the changes in the minutes were helpful in noting that fixes had been made. What has not still been done on the June 3rd minutes is where it talks about, we'll look at finance, page 2 of 4, letter C. It says Deshawn noted 2 corrections to the April 20, 2021 special meeting minutes. 1 correction and on and on. My request was that in parenthesis behind each one of those where it says 2 corrections, that it be recited what those corrections were. That's just my suggestion. At the last meeting, I said, you know, the committees do as they want, but I just want it put on the record, I do not approve of the June 3rd minutes for any of the committees that are recited within, because it does not have what those changes were. And again, at that meeting, Kevin stated that he thought identifying the changes in the minutes was helpful in noting that the fixes had been made. It was a way to go back and look at the minutes and say, okay, well, what were those changes? Then you can check the approved minutes and make sure that, you know, those changes were made. But again, it's up to the committee, but I want it stated for the record. If you choose to accept the minutes as they are prepared, I do not approve them. Not that you need my approval, but I just want it noted on the record.
Anybody have any comments?
How about a comment at the end of the minutes that would specify your changes or the changes that we make?
Excuse me?
At the end of the minutes, so we could specify at the end of the minutes and put a paragraph in there, specify the changes that's been made. Would that be appropriate?
Well, if you're going to do it at the end of the minutes, now when you say at the end of the minutes, are you talking the last page?
So the end of the finance minutes,
Okay,
would that be appropriate or not? Your opinion, please.
my opinion, I think it would be confusing. I think it would be, if you're going to add them at the end of each committee report or minutes, why not add them behind where it says, Deshawn noted 2 corrections to the April 20th minutes.
Okay.
And then state what those 2 corrections are. I think
In
it's
parentheses,
it's
you're
more
saying.
people-friendly, user-friendly to look and say, oh, she asked for 2 corrections, here's what they are. But if you go at the end of the report,
Okay.
Okay, I just wondered.
unless you want to
What
put
you
at the end of the report, 2 corrections to the April 20th, and then identify.
Footnotes.
I recommend that we do not approve the June 3rd until we have those corrections where the corrections are stated for each of the, she has it in number 2 where she notated 2 corrections for public participation. She has it in public lands, finance, health and safety, and the public participation number 4. So, that's going to be
There's
too
also
much to
14
try.
corrections. In
So-
number 2, there's 14 corrections to the May 18th, 21 regular council meeting minutes.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I just read the first
Oh, when
line.
you said 2,
I
you
just,
didn't mean the,
No,
noted
I
2
just said
corrections to.
in
okay.
section 2, and I started where you, I just read the first part. So,
Gotcha.
so I think we need to table June 3rd till we get those corrections for every one of those committees, because it's going to be too lengthy to try to figure that out tonight to get it in correctly.
So, Mr. Chairman, as a procedural type thing, is there something that we should just go ahead and make a motion and ask for a second and see about, making it across the board when there's changes, that we go ahead and do it as parentheses, and that way it clears it up. We don't have to go through this ever again.
You can, if you want. I mean, you can have that as part of your rules, or just your processes for doing it, or how you instruct the clerk to prepare your minutes.
Anybody have any other?
Would it be something as simple as we could just ask to have that done for the remainder of this term rather than passing legislation to change our rules for the next 2 months?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah,
an
that costs money.
administrative function
Yeah.
of how you request your minutes to be done by your clerk. That's the format you want them in is,
So,
you direct the clerk to prepare those, so.
you want to make a motion? Or you want to just,
Request, just
Yeah,
ask.
just asked her.
okay.
Rebecca, please.
Please.
Please and thank
Thanks.
you.
That satisfy you, Bruce?
Well, yeah, it satisfies me to the point that at least we know we're all going to be on the same page.
That's why I want to make sure that we're, okay. So we're going to table June 3rd till we get these corrected. So, and we will work on the finance for 524, 78, 722, 85, 98, and 99. Okay.
And the cover page. Well, the cover page,
For five
according to
cents.
the clerk, has been done.
Okay.
Just hasn't been presented for approval.
Okay.
Then next, we have the April 22nd Health and Safety minutes. I see no problem with those minutes. Then we have the, I lost one of my minutes. Oh, here we go. We have the September 8th Special Public Lands and Buildings. I do have some changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Paragraph 5th. Folk made a motion rather than notion.
I corrected that.
You could have made a notion.
That's why I was correcting when you looked at it.
And then take out the words "a" and "to." So it says folk made a motion to adjourn. And then the last line, Sherrick adjourned the Special Public Lands and Buildings Committee, not Special Plating Committee meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Then let's see here, Health and Safety Committee. Do you want me to give you a list of the minutes that I'm showing still remain?
Yes.
Prepared? I'm showing July 8th, July 22nd, September the 8th, September the 9th, September the 14th.
Okay.
Then Public Lands and Buildings Committee, I'm showing 7/8, 7/22, and 9/8. Plating Committee, I'm showing we still need minutes for 7/8, 7/22, 9/9, and 9/14. Service Committee, 7/8, 7/22, and 9/9. And Economic Development, 7/8, and 7/22. Are you going to be present for the Economic Development meeting, or will you be leaving before then, Doug?
Not having one.
Okay, I noticed it was on the agenda.
Yeah, she puts it on the agenda all the time.
Okay,
There's
that's
nothing
fine.
to do, yeah.
Then I'll go ahead and I have a correction to make to a statement that you made, Kurt, or Doug, excuse me.
Okay.
At the July 22nd Economic Development Committee, I questioned you on if we were going to approve the April 22nd and 5-6 committee meeting minutes. And you said the minutes were approved at the July 8th committee meeting. And you went on to say that I was present at the meeting and that I said the minutes were okay. Just as a matter of clarification, and it's confirmed by the audio recording, I was at the meeting, but I made no comment about the minutes.
Okay.
So
I apologize.
Yeah, I just want that correction, please.
Please note that.
Pardon?
I said, please note that.
Next, I have some concerns on our documents on demand. While getting ready for tonight's meeting, I noticed on our documents on demand, we have the following May 20th approved minutes under committee minutes. And I think you all saw the email that I had been sending out, and then Rebecca had indicated that she had made a folder called committee minutes. Or maybe that wasn't in the one to all, maybe that was just between you and me this morning. But anyhow, Rebecca has made a committee minutes folder, she informed me, under council minutes. And that's where the individual committee minutes are going to be placed. And that's easy for people when they want to look up a meeting, is to go there and find it. So today, when I was looking at that, I noticed that the Health and Safety Committee meeting minutes for May 20th that are under that and are to be the approved minutes, they're not the minutes that we approved. They are way old. And I mean, we're talking major, well, let's see here. Health and safety. Well, no, that one doesn't have major issues, but the bottom line is what is on documents on demand is not the minutes that were approved. Same thing with the finance minutes that are on the documents on demand as approved. Those are not the minutes that we approved. And then I'm wondering why the service committee minutes have not been put on documents on demand for May 20th, because those were approved at the 7/22 meeting, but they're not on documents on demand. Now, I've not looked at all the other committee minutes that are on documents on demand under committee minutes to double check and make sure that they actually are the minutes that you approved. I just came across these two just today and getting ready for tonight, so.
Are you suggesting they're the old minutes prior to the corrections?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Are these just scanned? Are you scanning them into the file?
Yeah, they're saved in a file on the computer, and they're put into a file for each day's, or each meeting.
Did we maybe not say the right ones?
But I have all.
Can you,
paper
oh, good.
notes.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that issue. Then also documents on demand and getting ready for tonight. And I put this in an email to all, but I noticed nothing's been done yet. Back on September 17th, I sent an email, and I indicated that the May 18th, 2021 council meeting minutes that appear in the documents on demand, when you go to print the minutes, number one, they're identified up in the corner as draft. The first 7 sentences of the minutes refer to May 4th, not May 18th, and it's the happenings of what happened on May 4th. But then after that, you've got your May 18th happenings. That's, again, if someone's going and they're checking these documents on demand, and these are your approved council meeting minutes, they're not correct. I've also noticed that there's 3 audio recordings for 8/5/21 regular committee meeting minutes, but they're listed as special meetings on documents on demand. So they were actually regular meetings, but they're identified as special meetings. On July 22nd, the joint regular committee meeting agenda was placed on documents on demand, but when I went to go look at it today, it's been removed from documents on demand. And I wondered why that was. The 7/22/21 joint regular committee agenda, council packet. Yeah, it's not there. Yes, yes. Because now if I go to my email notifications and I go to open it, it comes up and says,
It's no longer available.
yeah, it's been removed, or, yeah. And I noticed that that was done about a day or two after the July 22nd meeting, because I had gone to check and I noticed it was gone, and I'm just not quite sure why that's been removed. And if it could be put back on. Then here's my big concern with the documents on demand. Again, the clerk has set up a committee minutes folder, and she's putting the individual committee meeting minutes in that folder. In checking those, I'm noticing that there's the individual minutes, but the public participation that occurs at the beginning, that's not included in these minutes. So it's like the public participation, it's like it never occurred. And it did happen at each joint regular committee meeting at the beginning. So in my opinion, that needs to be placed somewhere. Either you take the public participation and you put it at the beginning of each individual committee meeting minute. Like say if someone just wants to look at health and safety. If they then look, then they can see the public participation that occurred. Or we could do a subfolder under the committee minutes, and you could call it cover page, or I don't care what you call it, but contain within that then the public participation that occurs.
I've brought this up to some council members, that this is the issue with having the joint committee meeting minutes separated out into individual pages, is that you lose the public participation part unless it's added somewhere else. And I've asked, where should this be added? And have not gotten a definitive answer yet. If the minutes are done for committee minutes the way that the June 3rd ones are set up, which has the public participation at the very top and then each committee in order, then you have all of that area, or all of the conversations and everything in one spot.
Question probably for Rob. When we have the joint committee meeting versus the way we used to have just a bunch of individual committees, are we required to have public participation before each committee meets, or can you throw that into each committee? Whereas what I'm asking is, could you do away with the need to have all that? And when we have finance committee, we ask if there's public participation. When you have planning committee, you ask it, and that does away with that.
Extra.
Yeah, two things. One, you're not absolutely required to have public participation. That's something that you do. But yeah, I mean, I think from the beginning, joint committees, it's one of the problems with doing it in that fashion is the public participation is broad over the whole meeting, which isn't really what you're doing. You're having a series of individual meetings, and as you indicated, call finance, public participation for finance. Everybody sits down, next committee, call that committee, public participation for that committee. It would be beneficial, especially going over minutes, because then you're doing the minutes per meeting. And as Doug indicated, with some of the committees, they don't necessarily meet every week.
And to Vicky's point here, for somebody who wasn't here tonight, who wants to go back and look at things, are they going to find the subject matter under the finance committee or during the, it might be in two different places. So I think that's a suggestion to consider, to do away with the format where we start with the public participation and go straight into, the first committee that meets and asks, and every committee asks if there's any public participation. Because quite honestly, if you've got a crowd of people sitting here and they're here to talk about something that occurs, on the second to last or the last committee tonight, and they talk now at the beginning of the meeting.
Well, we have that, every once in a while we have that hot
Right,
topic.
yeah.
We kind of know what some of the hot topics are, so we could always put that group up first.
Yeah, I think, at times when you get a crowd of people, you know what they're here to talk about, and we've done that in the past, so that they don't have to sit through all the other mundane stuff, which I think is completely fine to do.
What's your suggestion?
My suggestion is we going forward, we do away with the joint committee format of having it be its own meeting. And we just simply have a series of committee meetings that get called to order one after the next, and we don't have this format.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
What do you think, Jenny?
It's not up to me, it's up to you guys.
Well, I know, but you're
We're the
I mean, to
committee.
me,
Yeah, I
it
know.
makes more sense to have each committee with
Separate
their own
for the
public
public.
participation.
Me too.
My only fear, and I know why you put them all together, but my fear is what happens if Public Lands and Buildings approves theirs and Health and Safety doesn't, and then
Right.
we don't know what, that makes it more confusing. I understand why you did what you did, putting them together, but that's the problem I see happening, is unless you note on each one when they were approved, but I don't know, does that
Yeah, that's.
solve
yeah.
the issue?
It solves the issue going forward, but what about the
But we have a
previous-
lot of work to go back and
the
do,
previous
obviously, but.
minutes that,
Well, like you're suggesting, so since the public participation should be noted on every committee meeting, since that gathered at that time, we can just make sure that it's in with each of the individual folders. Or somehow a sub, like you said, a sub.
Could we list them by date? So this would be under September 23rd, and then everything would be underneath it. So as you're dividing things from there, you could have public lands, buildings, whatever, but for the ones previous, that, we could very easily just stick the packet in that date, and then we just have it by date, and you can have listed at the top who all met.
Is it sortable by date? That makes sense then.
I mean, if that helps clear up the previous, and then we can go on from that,
so would you mind repeating that, Erin?
like, go by date. So instead of saying just public lands and buildings or health and safety, you would say
Really?
joint regular committee meetings,
Really, Kurt?
September 23rd.
No, he
And
wasn't.
then you could even list the
Really?
like, who it was underneath who met. But that's what you click on. You click on the meeting date to find it.
We're involved right now.
So like,
Let me ask you, Rebecca,
like these
what's
packets, so that it covers everything the way we had before with your,
So on documents on demand,
you could click on September 23rd.
so you're making a new folder?
Well, inside the committee meeting minutes, committee meeting minutes, and then you separate it by date.
It would require making a new folder for each date, yes. Which is
Or
formatting
subfolder.
and within documents, it's formatting codes within documents, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody in approval of doing that to clear up the previous minutes?
Doing which one?
Hmm.
Or both?
All the-
Both.
So you
First, to
want
do
a-
the one with the dates, the
Meeting
previous minutes,
Everything up till today.
up till today, and then from, well, we called it as a joint.
Right.
After today's meeting, we will not call a joint regular committee meeting. Whoever is first, it'll start with plating or health and safety or finance, and each one will have their own individual public participation next month when we start our, is that, I mean,
I think that's a phenomenal idea, because here we are in Finance Committee and we're having an open council meeting right now, because all the council members are talking, and this is, they're calling it a joint regular committee meeting. We're in a full-blown council meeting right now. So I've had an issue with joint regular committee meetings ever since I've sat here and went to OML training.
so.
Sorry, that's just my opinion.
No, I have had the same concern, but that's one I haven't expressed.
So does anybody object to that?
No.
Okay, we'll go forward with that unless somebody has a better solution. Our next meeting, we will start our, whoever starts first will be them solely, and then it'll be each individual committee, not a joint regular. We'll meet the same day, but we're not going to start.
Okay.
And if I could also make a suggestion, that if you're not on that committee, you come out in the audience and sit.
Amen.
Amen. That's why I sit out there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki.
Okay, with that, I will end finance at 6:44 p.m. And I will start plating at 6:44 p.m. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Ratliff, Inez vacation update.
Well, Landon asked me to talk to you about this briefly. This is the one we talked about the other night, and
Was it Mr. Thidoff?
Yeah.
yeah, and Landon has, I believe, and I apologize because he kind of got ill today at the last minute. There is a plat that has been prepared that shows a vacated alley, what it would all be laid out as. There is a provision to vacate an alley, kind of an expedited vacation, if you will, if all the adjoining property owners are all agreed to it and there's ordinance in place. And since the plat has already been drawn, I think we could engage in that process and get that done. It sounded like everybody was on board with vacating that alley anyways. So,
Sound like he's been mowing it forever, so.
yeah, so since the plat exists already, I haven't seen it, but Landon said he had it. Then really all you would need is a resolution to authorize Service Safety Director to vacate the alley according to that plat. You'd want that plat attached to that resolution. And then if all the property owners sign off on it, so that would be the second thing. But you'd have to create legislation to do that. But I would say, I would hold off on it right now. I would just basically say that, you know, you're going to want the Service Safety Director to communicate with all the people neighboring the alley, make sure that that plat is legitimate and meets everybody's in agreement on it, that there's no, you know, the line should be a little bit over here, a little bit, none of that. And if everybody's agreeable and signing off on it, then come back, create an ordinance that authorizes the vacation using that plat and everything. So I think today, all you really need to do is tell him to get her done, Jeff, get her done, and then bring legislation at the next meeting, provided everybody's on board with it. It sounds like everybody is. Landon's kind of been talking to everybody, so.
Is that a new word?
Yeah, that's my word. I can get a hold of Ray.
I was saying.
I can talk to Ray Thidoff to tell him to get a hold of Jeff Wagner. That way there's not so much footwork.
Yeah, and I think Landon's talked to them, because that's how the plat came into existence, that it had already been done, so.
Right.
He's been in communication with them as well. So we can expedite that process.
Okay, I'll take care of it tonight.
It's all of the abutting properties.
Correct. Yeah.
They would all have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Do we need like a vote of good faith that we're okay to do it, or?
Well, wait until we get the site.
No, I think the first step is to get the plat that exists,
Right.
give it to the property owners, make sure everything's okay, and then we can go through the ordinance process to get it vacated.
Okay.
I have a question. Rob, is this the same alley vacation that we were working on when I was clerk?
I don't know.
Down,
There was one, and there was somebody was deceased or
Deceased.
unavailable or something. So that may throw a monkey wrench into it. If it is that same one, and if there is somebody doesn't exist, then you don't have unanimous sign off and you've got to go through the whole lengthy process.
Okay.
It may be.
I mean, when I retired, that plat and everything was down there
Yeah.
on the table.
Yeah.
I mean, because that thing went on forever. And that was one of the issues. One of the homeowners had died, and I believe was even passed away out of state. Either that or the executor of the estate was out of state. But, I mean, we had people coming down to the office and signing. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge plat and a
Yeah.
lot of signatures, but that's...
Yeah, that's on the shelf there in the back. It's dusty, but it's on the shelf there in the back, and I'm not sure if it's the same one or not.
Okay.
I'll check. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But that is, and Vicky's correct. I mean, that will throw a monkey wrench into it if there's a budding property owner that's, unattainable.
Then we have to go through a legal process of
Then
a
you have
public hearing. and
Public
everything.
hearing and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. All right, to the committee in agreement to ask Jeff to communicate with Landon, and you're going to talk with Ray to communicate?
Yeah, so he brings the stuff to you guys.
Okay. All right, we will wait to hear from Landon and you for legislation.
All right, we're going to have it around as long as isn't the deceased person.
We'll gather all the information we can get.
Yeah.
Okay, the alley vacation. This is the one I do believe on, off of Poplar.
Mary.
And Mary. Were you able to find out anything yet?
What I was told yesterday,
Sorry. What I was told yesterday, McKeevers are checking on the west alley by the end of the Powers building, and he's looking back where the end of the property is. He thinks we might have room to get back there. So he's supposed to be doing some surveying or checking it out to see if that's possible. But I've heard no more than that.
Okay. As long as we're progressing, that's all I care. I said it'd be lengthy and it takes time, so.
Well, that's still, Jeff Dunn just told me that yesterday. So we'll continue to work on it to see if it's feasible.
Okay. And you have the Bucyrus codified ordinance modifications.
Which one, for what?
Yeah.
There's a couple of them that were floating around.
So that's a draft, Mark, that's just a reading. That's just
Oh,
a
is that the one I
draft
sent
reading.
you? Okay, so, not to take over your committee, I'm sorry.
No.
At the last meeting, you guys had talked about maybe breaking out just the vacant and abandoned buildings and just the penalty provisions.
That's health and safety, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where we had done it under. So that's what that is. You have it, take a look at it, see what you like, don't like, then you reconvene and talk about it. I just got it to you. Well, I just got it to Rebecca.
Like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock there.
Yeah, maybe if you're lucky, yeah. you might do.
Health and safety.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's health and safety.
Both of my typing fingers were working really hard today.
Okay, that'll go to you. All right, Fairview sidewalk.
So I spoke with the homeowner. She contacted the recorder's office and spoke to a gentleman named EJ at the recorder's office that said there is nothing specific to anything about sidewalk requirements on the deed. She also contacted the title company and got a copy of the deed showing that there are no restrictions referring to sidewalks in her property. So I contacted the law director, and I'll let him explain to you what he told me.
Our ordinance and the ORC both give the authority to mandate creation of sidewalks and repair of sidewalks to the city. They're silent on allowing somebody to remove a sidewalk. Now, I don't know, and I haven't yet went back and looked through ancient ordinances, for lack of a better term, to see if there was a prior ordinance that required sidewalks to be built in that neighborhood and on that street. There may very well be, back whenever that street was originally constructed. So that would be the next place to look. But our ordinances are silent on removing sidewalks. So unless there was a prior ordinance that mandated the sidewalk be put in there, there may not be anything to require it to be there. So the next step is to look through our old ordinances, see if there's anything that was passed when that street was created that required the sidewalks.
I got a wrench. I'm gonna throw it into your mix. So if you pull that old ordinance and it somehow stipulates and mandates in there that those sidewalks were supposed to be installed when those homes were built and they weren't, what's the recourse on that?
There's a process. The city can assess it, put them in if they choose to force to do that, or they can repeal that ordinance.
Okay.
See, also, the people forget there is right-of-way that far in where that sidewalk is, to the inside edge is the city's right-of-way, not the outside edge. So,
Trust me, we all.
front of my porch is only 6 feet from the right-of-way.
Same as mine.
Yeah. So,
I guess I'm looking for, what am I supposed to call this homeowner back and tell her? She has called us asking for our opinion and our stance and what she can and cannot do, because she's waiting on us to make a decision before she does anything.
we have to wait to see if there's.
Next step is to look through your ordinances and see if there's an when that was built, if it was built subject to an ordinance that mandated sidewalks on that street or in that area.
If there isn't, then we can.
If there isn't, then it's still silent on that issue. There's nothing that requires her to do it unless you pass an ordinance requiring sidewalks.
So who's gonna look for this old ordinance?
Your clerk can search sidewalks and, you know, it'll.
I didn't say you could do it.
It'll pull up the ordinances that pertain to it, and you will have a rough idea of when that house was built.
If they're scanned in.
Yeah, if they're scanned in. If not, then we just have to go through the books. But they're indexed. It's fairly easy to do.
Hey, you asked him, not me.
That's Jim.
I had a question for you, though.
Oh.
Is the sidewalks in disrepair, are they in bad shape? Are they?
Yeah, you can tell by the street view that's probably about 2 years old. I mean, I wouldn't say they're in complete disrepair, but you can see there's good big enough cracks in them that there's stuff growing up in between them, and there's some busted up lights.
So they probably need replaced.
Oh, they would need replaced or removed like she wants to do, because she doesn't
Okay.
want them. Because it doesn't continue on any further past her house, so she would rather have the yard than the sidewalk out front.
There's probably not a time frame that she has to put them back in, is there?
Huh? No.
Right.
It's up
If
to
they
the
were
city.
being
It's up to the
repaired.
city.
So you're saying she could take them out right now, and if we tell her to put them back in, then we would tell her to
Put them back in. Tell her to expect us to tell her, put them back in.
If she removes them and the ordinance states.
I'm not telling her to do anything until we get an answer on this ordinance.
Okay.
But it is nice to know that there is technically nothing right now on the books for all these people to have issues with their sidewalks
All right.
because of trees in the tree lawn.
Are there any other open projects that the committee wants to discuss this evening? If not,
I understood from Landon that you guys were going to discuss the north end property just south of the Sunoco.
That's up next, Bob.
Public lands.
Public lands and
but
buildings.
public lands, this is, this is plating. I
Yep.
don't-
I thought it was like,
You're up next.
Okay. I will, if there's nothing else, I will adjourn at 6:57.
And I will call Public Lands Buildings to order at 6:57 PM. Okay, so the first thing on here was sale of 1411 North Sandusky Avenue. Do we have any public participation about
I
this?
think this is Rob pretty much.
I like what you just did there.
Yeah, that worked out good.
Did you have anything on it, or do you want to hear what he was talking about first?
Well, I'm just here to kind of fill in some blanks maybe. I used to own that property until last year, and I sold that as one property to Harry Sorrows, the owner of the Sunoco station. He now has a buyer, the way I understand, for the building, which when I bought that property, I bought that building probably 8-10 years before I purchased the house and the other building from another party. So at one time, them were separate. But I built a pole barn in the back of that, and when Country Star owned the Sunoco, they bought that pole barn in the back half of that lot. And I think at that time, somehow this got thrown in there that you couldn't sell one property without the approval of the city. I can't see any reason in the world that those couldn't be sold separate. They were before. They both have right-of-ways right off of Sandusky. They both got frontage on Sandusky. One's a house with a block building behind it, the other was a commercial building. So I don't understand why that ever got on there, but it should be removed so we can go ahead and sell it and get some business back in that big building. That's the way I look at it.
I'm not gonna argue. That used to be a video store when I was a kid by itself on its own, so.
Yeah, no, and Bob, I appreciate the historical input, because when the potential buyer came to the city about getting this released, I mean, the first thing we tried to figure out was why was it there in the first place? And we really never came up with a good answer to that other than it just is. And it doesn't seem to be any reason not to be there. Planning Commission met. The only concern Planning Commission
put it on?
We don't. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, Bob there was a quit claim deed from Bob back in 2004 that contained it, and it's been carried on ever since, I guess. There was some concern about maybe ingress and egress through one of the alleyways, if maybe the Sunoco station expanded over, maybe that had something to do with it, but it's all speculation.
The city did require the Sunoco or Country Star at the time to put a entrance into that pole barn section off of their property. They didn't want a lot of traffic going up alongside that big building. Semis mainly, I think.
Yeah.
Yep, makes sense.
And I don't think Sunoco had a plan for that anyway, but they did go ahead and put a back entrance in that.
Yeah, that was the only thing that we could think of, that was maybe in case, Sunoco made some sort of a big, circular driveway, right next to that house and stuff. That would.
Maybe, but now, see, the thing is that Harry Sorrows he owns that now. So, and I'm sure the reason, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I would guess, the reason he bought the house in the block building, he probably wants to expand his property someday, Sunoco.
I got a house I'll sell him.
Lisa's like,
2 doors down.
Couple doors down.
I had heard that he had bought the house because he had his store manager or whatever living in the house.
That didn't happen then. Later, in fact, I think the tenant that I had in the house was an excellent tenant. I would have never in a million years ever got rid of him. But Harry did go to him and ask him to move because he did have somebody, like you're saying, to come in. And so maybe he'll never tear that house down, but I just assumed that's what he probably was going to do.
Yeah, the plan use that building is medical office.
Right. So out of this committee, you just, need a motion?
We need a. Yeah, no, we need legislation. We need a resolution for the recorder's office that the city will agree to releasing that condition on the deed. Because the deed restriction is only that it has to have the permission of the city. And I apologize for the thought there. Normally it's ordinances for real estate, but we're not technically removing anything on the real estate. We're simply giving our permission, and that's what the restriction on the deed calls for. So we just need a resolution authorizing the individual sale of that building.
Do we need that as an emergency?
The potential owner would like to get in and started as quickly as possible.
All right, so do I have a?
I'll request an emergency resolution to remove the deed restriction from 1411 North Sandusky Avenue at the recorder's office, so the property can be sold separately. Okay.
All in favor?
Yes.
No?
Go ahead.
Do you have a question?
So you're removing it off the deed? You're not just giving?
No.
No, that's what he said. He said give permission. You just made a motion to remove it from the deed.
Yeah, we just need a resolution allowing the sale of individual parcels.
Instead of remove, allow.
Yeah,
So you're allowing the sale of the property,
yes, of individual parcels.
Leaving the deed restriction in place.
leaving the deed restriction.
Once we get permission, the deed restriction won't matter anymore because we'll have given permission for it to be parceled off.
Jenny, did you have a question?
Just real quick. Oh, it just came and went.
About the deed restriction?
Yeah. Hang on, it'll come back around like a merry-go-round.
Yep.
Emergency or not?
Shush, shush, quit talking to me. What's the normal time frame if this wasn't listed as an emergency for this process to be done? We have the 3 readings.
6 weeks, and then 30 days after the third reading. 6 weeks plus 30 days.
It's about 3 months.
The way I understand, he has a buyer for the building. I would hate to jeopardize that if it could be speeded up a little bit. But
Right, she's communicated with us a couple times about financing and those issues.
Okay, so we have a motion
To allow.
for a resolution?
Yeah, a resolution to allow the sale of the individual
To allow the
parcels.
sale in parcels. And we have a second.
I got another
He wants to
question.
throw some more wrenches.
And we have another
I'm
question.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
But it's costing us $200 for a resolution because this has been put on someone's deed, and we're not releasing it off the deed. The restriction's been put on by the city, but we're not releasing it off the deed.
Well, we don't know that the restriction was put on by the city. We don't know where it came from, quite frankly.
Okay, we're giving them
and
permission to
once-
sell the property.
Once we give permission to parcel off the property, that restriction is done because it's been separated.
Okay, all right.
So,
Can I ask a question? You don't know when they were put together? Is that,
no, we don't know when, the first instance we have of where that was recorded in the deed goes back to that 2004 deed. I don't know if it existed before that. It doesn't really matter. It exists from that point forward, so it exists now. We didn't do any search beyond that because it was created at least on that day, so that was it.
yeah, I bought those properties separate, complete. I bought the one from Martin Lewis, builder. Bought the other one from Rita Rankin, who was a realtor here in town. Totally separated lots.
Yeah.
Because I remember when it was a giant
so
city when I was a kid.
you're just separating the house from the big building, or are you separating the brick building from the pole barn building?
Well, the pole barn, that's all separated. That's been done a long time. The big building runs perpendicular to Main Street, and the house and the building behind it run perpendicular. So really, there's just a line between them.
The building.
So you're trying to separate those two?
Yeah, if somebody wants to buy the big commercial building, put it back in as a business, Harry wants to keep the house and the other thing. I don't know how it could have ever got on there, but it is.
Right, okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, the next is the ambulance building. Thank you, by the way.
At this time, I'd like to table it.
Okay.
I'm not quite ready yet.
Again?
Again. Oh, no, this is a first for that.
All right, so then we have the American Tower.
Well, this is just to show you on this map, and I think you all got a picture of it. It shows where the existing fence is, and then they want an additional 10 feet into the impound lot, 58 feet long, because they got one building that they would like to put up, and I think there's another building maybe coming in the future, but they would like to have another 58 by 10 feet. And they basically would just move their fence back. But we have not talked to them about what we would want to charge them financially for that extra space. And I can get a hold of them, have them try to come to a meeting or via Zoom, or we talked about, all our towers and whether we should have somebody manage them all, or how that works with what we have on them now, I don't know. But Rob, you can talk a little bit about it, but.
Well, and that's it. We've got a long-term lease with this company currently. It goes up 15% every 5 years. We're getting roughly a little over 15,000 a year right now. And what kind of I thought was interesting about this drawing that they sent us is if you look to the two lines, at the top of that drawing, the next line up, it says future fence, and the next line up after that, future lease area. Like they're already anticipating more growth. And I mean, that's our impound lot and other things. So I mean, they may be long-term planning without us. I don't know.
Wow. That sounds it.
Yeah, so, and this is, it goes back to an issue way back when this was originally done. I mean, it was never put out to bid. I mean, there's ways to do it without putting it out to bid, but it wasn't done in any of those sorts of ways, the best I can tell. And, we have other towers, and we may have other places for towers. Kurt knows, that business better than any of us.
Now that you mentioned his name, it's his turn.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, but he does know more about that business.
But that's what I'm saying, he brought something about.
Yeah, so, and Jeff's point about, maybe asking for RFQs, like we would with an engineering firm for tower management or space management firm, like we did with water towers to keep the water towers clean, like we do with engineers for projects. I don't know, maybe the laws are such that we should consider that as well, but.
Okay, so what was that, Kurt?
Couple different things. When the original discussion happened about the Verizon tower coming in, at one point, and this goes clear back to John Walker being on council, that it was supposed to have in that contract, if future tenants went on that tower, that the city would get additional rent. Now that's totally irregardless of the additional land space. When that contract got executed, that provision was not in the contract. So theoretically, the tower owner, if they did something like an equipment cabinet or something where they don't need extra land space, I see nothing in the contract to keep that would allow the city to get any additional revenue. They could put another tenant or two in there. They're still paying the same amount of revenue that the city's collecting right now. So what I see here is an opportunity to obviously they want to get more land, but you can use that as leverage to go back and fix what was not in the original contract. So not only could you potentially get money for the additional land, but you can have that contract set up that says the city has rights to see any subleases on the tower, and you could make this thing say whatever you want. You could have it say you have rights to 50% of what the revenues are from all the tenants. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can word that. And so I would hope that, you could be talking like $5,000 a month here between everything I just said. And that's way more than what the city's getting right now for it. On top of what they're getting right now, you could probably be getting another $5,000. And then also, obviously it's leasing of public land. So you have the whole issue with the Ohio Revised Code about saying it's got to be put out for public bid. With what they did to me with the water towers and saying that mine, that argument just kept getting thrown out there for at least 2 years straight, that whole time we were discussing it. I've heard people saying here, well, let's put this tower land in the CIC. Well, that's a way that you're getting around the Ohio Revised Code requirement. So what I would suggest is, talk to Verizon, or not Verizon, American Tower, negotiate kind of what your rental income would be with them, and then put it out for public bid with that as the minimum number. And then, that way you're legally fulfilling all the requirements. Plus, you could potentially, some other bidder may show up and offer even more.
I have a question. If that is put into the CIC, can that income be put into the CIC to help take care of some of the derelict properties that are in town?
No, revenue from these, revenue from the CIC has to be sent back to the city. You need profit the CIC has to be taken back to the city. Now, that has to go into capital improvements within the city. So it could be used for, sidewalks,
Yeah.
Things that are considered capital improvement. Yeah.
And I do have an email from American Tower that they're right up front about AT&T and T-Mobile. That's who they're doing it for. And they are asking to talk about the financial end of it. So, as you talk about not just this tower, and in this tower, in the contract, when they leave, they take everything with them. They take it down to the footers. Whenever you terminate this contract with them, they don't leave the tower. It'll come down according to what I read in the contract. So as we look at, as Kurt said, there's more money involved with what we could lease to them. And is there a way to accommodate other people? And I know, Kurt, you have a contract on our other towers, but is there a way that multiple people can use them that we're missing out on income?
So you said, so you're saying that you can get them to come talk to us?
Well, she's leaving a question mark after the financials, so I would say yes. Or do it via Zoom.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
way. I think that's what we need to have.
I would definitely say we need to hold that and schedule a time when she can come speak with the committee and the council, because I'm sure there's some other parts of the council that need to hear it.
But, and if I could, the only other thing I would ask is include the police department in it as well, because that is our impound lot that, we do hold evidence and things like that there. We do that there because it's close to the station and it's monitored and there's cameras and stuff like that. If we're going to eat away at that, or even if their prospect for growth is, 5, 10, getting bigger and bigger, which is fine. I mean, we don't want to turn away that money, but we also want to look at what their needs are and maybe try to find a way to solve that issue as well.
What are we currently using that money for?
It just, as far as I know, it just goes in the general fund. It's 15.8 a year,
Yeah.
15,000.
The original contract was for 10 years, and it came up last year when we were doing remote meetings for that 10 years was coming up, and the way it was worded, if the city did nothing, it just auto-renewed for another either
5-year term.
So, there's 4 years left. But, I mean, they're gonna wanna keep that tower there. They're not gonna take it down to the footer unless you completely don't allow that contract to renew. But as far as the subleasing and stuff, like traditionally, when you have multi-tenants on a tower, the way those contracts are worded, if the landowners know what they're doing when they sign into this stuff, those contracts are wrote to the landowner gets a portion of the rent off of each additional tenant, and then if a tenant was to leave, that rent goes away. So it's kind of fair. So like the tower company is not signing into something not knowing if they're for sure gonna have these tenants forever.
And that's one of the details, and I think that's when Mr. Wagner was talking about was one of the details of maybe throwing out an RFQ out there for a management company or a firm that specializes in towers, a law firm or management company or anything, to assist us in that negotiation kind of process. Find out how much is the tower really worth, kind of thing.
I know the law director's had numerous calls. I know the mayor has gotten some, so there is interest, obviously the way
The world's going of wireless, and so we might be missing out on some income that could be beneficial to the city.
Okay, so we need to bring those people in here so we can have everybody's input. And as you said, the police department needs to be invited, so I must get a message to Mr. Oppenheimer as to when you guys are requesting them.
I can do that.
All right. So do we have anything else we need to talk about in public lands and buildings? All right, then I am going to end public lands and buildings at 7:21 p.m.
I'm not even going to start service committee. We've already been told what the meetings that we do need updated, and I'm going to leave it at that.
I say, was there anything for health and safety tonight?
No, because this that we just got emailed to us today, I'd like everybody to read through it, and then we'll schedule a meeting. So, no, I have nothing.
And economic development's already said, so I will go ahead and ask if there's any more public participation. Okay, with that being said, I'll end the actual whole joint regular committee meeting at 7:21 p.m. Or do I need a I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.